Alrighty, here we have Bitcoin. Bitcoin, of course, on the short-term timeframes, I do want to follow up on, and we do see that Bitcoin has come down to the bottom side of our blue box territory right here, as we kind of had the old LARP lines over the weekend, likely testing around this 41.5-ish region, and likely a bounce off that region as well. We have had about a 10% or a little bit more than a 10% move to the downside, pretty much unabated without any sort of meaningful bounce in between, and well, probably looking at a bit of that right now, as we do start to build up some bullish divergences on lower-term timeframes, not higher term timeframes. Now, I do suspect that this next drive over here is likely to lead towards at least one more test towards the downside in this case, as we do see over here on CME, that same sort of regular bullish divergence drive on the 4-hour, which does represent, at least in my opinion, the lower term timeframes, is not even there. Now, it is quite low, but can always go lower, to quote the old famous saying. and at the end of the day, I do suspect that while Bitcoin probably does test this region maybe once or twice more times, probably does set up for a bounce here sooner rather than later. The reason why I do say that is because over here on our other short-term time frame momentum oscillators, we do see that things are relatively critical right now, and it's going to be kind of difficult to maintain heavy downside pressure with short-term time frame momentum oscillators this low right now. And we can see over here, especially on CME, because I really trust CME signals on a Monday and Tuesday over spot price action. They just have a higher hit rate if you do back test them. We can see over here that we are kind of getting ready for a bit of a corrective bounce. Now, again, corrective bounce within the context of current trend does mean that the bounce likely does fail, but how high can price action get before that bounce fails? Well, we'll get into that soon enough. But for right now, we see 6-hour is going to turn back up above 42,550. Currently speaking, Bitcoin's $300 below there. So actually, still downside pressure to be fair for right now. I'd want to see that level actually taken out specifically on a 4 to 6 hour closing basis. And you also notice over here on the 4-hour, 42.5 is going to be the same sort of magical number in order to force 4-hour stochastic momentum back onto the upside. And we do see that volatility is very, very low here. Again, probably setting up for a bit of a corrective signal, as we do see that DMI is against price action right now. Anyways, on top of that, if we go down to the hourly, I imagine we're probably flippy floppy in the critical zone as well. You can see that all of these are kind of coming in from the critical zone here. So again, 42,150 or so likely aligns with a bit of sideways in the short term, maybe one more test to the downside and putting another official drive of bullish divergence on the 4-hour for spot price action, and maybe even build one up on the on CME chart, and then very likely a bounce. Now, where can bounce targets kind of get towards in this case? Well, let's go into the charts right here. Let's reference the good old LARP lines, as we have been, and anywhere around 38, or sorry, not 38, Jesus Christ, I'm getting way ahead of myself right now, but anywhere around 43,800 is fair game. That's basically the top side of the range that we have seen on the short-term timeframes right here. That's also going to be in alignment with the 382 Fibonacci retracement, obviously. Now, the 382 Fibonacci retracement in this case, if we do see a rejection right there, which I'm not calling a rejection right now, I'm just saying that if you were to see rejection right there, obviously, we actually have to wait until price action would even, get somewhere even reasonably around there to begin with. That would be obviously the next lower high. And whenever you do see, in this case, on a downtrend, a lower high at the 382, it's probably leading towards a trending move, further down in this case. By the same token, I would be looking at these next sort of areas on the, basically on the fibs, which also do correlate with price action, obviously. As kind of range resolution regions, meaning that while I wouldn't necessarily have a call that Bitcoin's going to definitely break 43,800, I would say that if it does, if we do see even a 4-hour closure above there, or even an hourly above about $44,000, I would be looking for the next leg up somewhere between the 0.5 and the 618. This is the big area right here, however, to go over a little bit of hopium, which I do think is less likely right now, but we always should go over what would be required in order to flip the hopium switch back on, would be with any sort of a higher term time frame closure above the 618 Fibonacci retracement here. That would be about $45,000. Any sort of a daily closure above there, I will call this a major bear trap, and I will flip around to being bullish, at least for another move back up somewhere around Bitcoin's current highs from late March, and probably does, insight targets much higher, actually into the deep $50,000 territory, as we reference the higher term timeframes over here. In the following week, something like that would still be relevant, $55,000, $56,000. I think that's a little bit less likely, granted what's happened in the last 72 hours, especially given that we did have both the weekly closure for CME and, of course, spot price action as well last night, closing below some very, important regions. But I suspect that as long as Bitcoin's below $45,000, it's in the way that I look at things and the way that I do things, it's not relevant to be speaking about any sort of like major hopium cases here. Anyways, that is, again, a bit of a juxtaposition between my short-term sort of look on this asset, meaning that short-term, I do think a little bit of sideways, very likely a bounce to open up this week. And then the question is, where does Bitcoin get its next rejection, if it gets a rejection at all? If you do see Bitcoin back above 45, which I think is unlikely, but if it were to happen, that's where I do call a bear trap confirmed. Until then, these are the areas of interest that I'd be looking for on an upside bounce in the next 48 hours or so. And to be fair, if Bitcoin were to close a full hour below about 41.6, 41.5 region, I would be looking for continuation to the downside first. And when I say continuation to the downside, I mean the next leg down, essentially, basically to $40,000 or so before the next short-term, medium-term time frame bounce, most likely. Until then, just kind of looking at the same thing as we have, and we should now go over the higher term timeframes here because we have gotten a lot of things set in place over the last few days here. Okay, so first and foremost, let's go over here. Let's put it on a weekly. We can first reference spot price action because this is the new one, and we did confirm. Hey, stop that! Damn it! Damn it! There we go. We did confirm a drop of hidden bearish divergence right here, right above the neutrals, or basically right in the neutral zone as well. So it's not like a super strong, it's not a super strong signal, but typically is going to be good enough to get things back down to the bottom side of the prior range. And in this case, for the weekly, that's around your $38,000 region. We also did close not just below the yellow 21 exponential moving average, but also the 55, and actually we closed below all major moving averages right here. If you are following the crown cross, that's like not a great signal to be fair, but it's not necessarily an entry in this case as well. But ultimately, where does that likely align with things coming down towards? Again, based off the weekly RSI divergence, that does have a technical target back down to the bottom side of the prior range. And then if we do go back on over here and combine that with the underlying market dynamics, namely the global open interest, we have to remember that in the past couple weeks here, in late March, we did see extreme reads. We saw extreme reads well above 14 billion, actually all the way to 14.5 billion. And anytime that we have seen any sort of a move on the open interest above 14 billion or even around there, plus price action confirming a local high, that has been leading up to at minimum a 20% pullback, and in some cases 50% pullback. Now that we're starting to lose our data from the last year, we actually can't even reference last April April from last year is what I mean to say. But just for clarity, or just for perspective, Bitcoin's open interest on that last high at $48,000 or so was about 14.5 billion. The open interest that we did see, representing again leveraged positions from last year's all-time high at $65,000 before the end of the year, obviously. Open interest was just a smidge above there at about 14.8, I believe. Yeah, 14.8. So that kind of puts some things into perspective. I mean, shit, even just comparing it with the late December rally to $52,000, that good old Santa rally, the Santa rally that, that we deserve, right? We actually, or sorry, not we, but open interest was actually $1 billion above on that last rally that we did see to $48,000. So there's a big divergence between open interest and price action. And, the unraveling from that in the past has typically led towards about a 20% move, in some cases more. And in this case, if we were to measure a 20% move off the top, where does that put Bitcoin? About 38,000, a little bit above $38,000 in this case. Obviously, we can take that and extrapolate that signal a little bit more with the daily sorry, no, it's not. Was it over here? Yeah, well, it was over here. Yeah, that's right. The daily BBWP signal, of which in the past, let me see, where's my damn chart for this one? Here we go. The daily BBWP signal, anytime that we have seen in the past few months here, a BBWP read, around the low teens or even single digits, the resolution from that has actually had a pretty, or I wouldn't say normal, but pretty presumed. What I'm trying to say is that the result from it has been very similar each and every time. So in this case, what do we see? Coming in from this first one over here, you see that first move down. What is it, about 23%? You can see the direction was set on that first day down from expansion, represented by the green vertical bar here. The next one over here, obviously to the upside, first day up. The big expansion from that was about 24% from bottom to high. Most of that done in the first day. And then again, once again to the downside over here. Most of it done in the first day, and then goes for another about 23% or so. And then same thing over here. A good amount done in the first day. Not as much as the other ones, to be fair, but still of relevance. And another 23% move to the upside in this case. Anyways, in this case, obviously we have seen that first leg up for daily BBWP. And Direction was set in the first day, and so far, Bitcoin's done from high to low about 13.5%, which is, a good amount. Definitely a lot actually when you do think about things. But 20%, where does that put us? Obviously $20,000 or not 20,000. Sorry, apologies. Definitely needed more sleep last night. About 38,000 or so, give or take. So I think the hopium case, if Bitcoin does get that continuation, maybe after another short-term time frame bounce, is that Bitcoin will put in a weekly higher low in this region right here. Let me kind of do the old LARP lines for this one, but basically something like this, where maybe it bounced first, comes down like that, and sets in a higher low, and then flips back around later this quarter, and very clearly trades above what is our current local high at about $47,000 or so. If we see something like that, that would obviously be very long-term bullish. I think that this is a little bit more of the hopium case right here. I do think that there are some other relatable reasons to perhaps be more bearish long-term, obviously. But this is, now we're getting a little bit too far away from things, so I don't think that is as relevant. Anyways, what we should also check out over here is our daily stochastic momentum on CME, as it's going to massively differ from spot price action. There's actually something really, really important happening right here. A couple things, actually. One, we have broken the regression trend line that was right at the edge of the bullish control zone, and now nosediving well below it, and will be remaining with downside momentum on the daily, a rather powerful time frame, as long as Bitcoin's below $47,000. Also, the DMI has switched to negative, as of like 3 closures ago. So that is suggesting more downside. Now, this is different on spot price action. Keep in mind, on spot price action, we're very, very low here, obviously, and really wouldn't take too much to flip it back up. But what does that likely leads towards? Maybe a short-term corrective move, but CME does still say pressure down. On top of that, we also did confirm a 5-day closure last night. In the 5-day, the 5-day is also kind of telling us something of particular interest over here. As remember, the 5-day for, where's my damn chart for this one? I think it's right here. Yeah, there we go. The 5-day, I won't go through the full explanation of this. If you want the full explanation of it, definitely check out yesterday's video in the long-term analysis playlist. But in this case right here, Bitcoin did not close specifically below the critical 5-day region. That it was $42,000 yesterday, but closing right at it, obviously, and then that number going up to keep momentum to the upside is not a signal that it's not a good signal is what I'm saying. It's certainly not a signal that there's like still significant upside pressure right now. Now, of course, you do want to see this obviously confirm below that momentum level before the expansive phase of the 5-day BBWP, which, by the way, didn't just take another leg down. Now it's back below the moving average. So we still have not seen the official expansion from this. So I do suspect that, we could actually see this signal evolve a little bit more and go back into like dormancy, basically, maybe a bounce up to like 43.5 or something like that, comes back down, sets in a higher low right here. And then if we see the expansion, a big thing like that, that would actually be what I think is kind of like the long-term bullish case. Until then, I do still think that there's pressure down, and well, I suppose that we'll kind of follow up on this as time goes onwards and forwards. Anyways, I will also humbly request, as we get to the end of this video here, that if you did enjoy this content, if you did think that this was in some way valuable, or if you just want to, give back to the channel in some sort of a free way, well, liking the video would be a very easy way to do that. Anyways, other than that, I want to wish you well, and there you go for Bitcoin, sirs and zers.